As Donald Trump and Ben Carson have turned up the volume with more and more outrageous statements and policy proposals, members of Congress have been trying to keep up. Now Republicans in the House not only have to play to the small but extremely vocal segment of the electorate that feels Washington is, quote, out of step with the American people, but they have another audience to woo, each other, because a lot of our colleagues are currently running for leadership positions. But is it really Washington that's out of step with America? Or is it the most vocal, most active, and most vitriolic elements of the Republican base that are out of step with America? Last week's NBC News Wall Street Journal poll was pretty startling. It showed on issue after issue that the positions adopted by the leading GOP candidates, vast majority of Americans disagree with Republicans. On abortion restrictions, immigration, LGBT equality, racial diversity, reproductive health, some in the Republican base demand we go back to the dark ages. But it is not, in fact, the direction that most Americans want to go. For most Americans, Mad Men was a good TV drama set before racial integration, before women's movement really took hold, before gays and lesbians dared come out of the closet, and before we moved racial quotas from immigration. But some in the Republican Party aspired to turn it into a reality TV show. The latest throwdown from the right has been over Planned Parenthood and reimbursing this respected organization for health services it provides to women across the countries. In many cases, Planned Parenthood is the only source of affordable, accessible reproductive health care. Contraception, HIV, STD testing, cancer screenings, and basic health care for women. Under federal law, our tax dollars cannot pay for abortions, and there are no credible claims that this is being violated. And under law, abortion is legal in the United States despite all the restrictions imposed and proposed by my Republican colleagues. But this goes further than abortion rights and a woman's right to control her own health care and reproduction. Some Republicans here and around the country are frankly not too comfortable with the whole family planning thing. In my family, I have two daughters who are brilliant and whom I trust to make decisions for themselves. They were born 8 years apart and not by accident. My wife and I planned her pregnancies around her career as an investment banker and had our children when we were ready. That is an option that opened the world of opportunity and self-determination to my wife that my mother never had. Puerto Rican women in this country, in my mother's day, had one thing forced on them by the government, and that was sterilization, period. So when I hear talk about shutting down the government to appease the far right on Planned Parenthood, I think of the progress we have made from my mother's generation to my wife's generation and now to the world in which my daughters live. It seems to me that we should not be looking for ways to limit choices women have, to force them into back alleys or across state lines for health care, or to treat them as if only wise men in Washington can make decisions for the women of America. But that desire to turn the clock backwards, to undo the progress of our lifetimes, and to punish America for evolving over time is basically at the heart of the Republican agenda as driven by their most active and vocal base. Republicans run for office and legislate as if they want gay people back in the closet, as if they want Latinos and Asians to become invisible, as if they wish women were just in the kitchen or in the bedroom. As if we could go back to those golden days before the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, Brown versus the Board of Education, when everything was separate and some people were more equal than others. Well, with all due respect to Mr. Carson and Emperor Trump, every poll indicates that the American people are not with them, and that is especially true of young people in America. Dr. Carson must be nostalgic for the anti-Catholic days before John Kennedy was elected, because he is now raising doubts that people of certain religions are qualified to serve their country as president. Senator Cruz must look at the old days when we turned away refugees from Europe because of their religion, as we did in the 1930s and 40s when anti-Semitism gripped this country. Now he wants to send Muslims back to die in Syria. And then there is Donald Trump. He wants to deport about a quarter of the 50 million Latinos in the United States. If mass deportation was good enough for President Eisenhower, he feels it should be good enough for America today. I will agree with one leading candidate, Jeb Bush, who recently said that stuff happens. Stuff does happen. A lot of stuff has happened since the 1950s when I was born and the 60s when I grew up in America. Our laws and our culture have evolved to become more inclusive, and we have a more diverse and egalitarian society because of it. Many Republicans call that stuff the problem. I call that stuff progress.